O.J. Simpson is the embodiment of the American dream, a poor black kid from the wrong side of the tracks who beat the odds and made a fortune as a sporting hero. So Americans were stunned when O.J. was charged with stabbing his wife and her male friend to death. Could Mr. Nice Guy really be a brutal psychopath? And can American justice remain blind to his wealth and fame? Our report is by Tom Mangold of the BBC.
The crime itself was only too simple. On the night of June the 12th, someone called here at Nicole Simpson's house on South Bundy in the posh Los Angeles suburb of Brentwood. When she came to the garden gate, and as the cars drove by, she was noiselessly slashed to death in the shadows. At about the same time, Nicole's friend Ronald Goldman came to see her. The same killer then overpowered and knifed him to death too. Even in a city that lives by excess, this was an awful crime. In the morning, detectives began investigating the nightmare on South Bundy. Nicole's throat had been cut, Goldman had been slashed in maniacal frenzy. There was no apparent motive. Suspicion soon fell on Nicole's ex-husband, but O.J. Simpson was both the most and least likely man to have committed the murders.
Why did Hertz invent #1 Club Gold service?
Having run into America's consciousness as a superb black athlete, O.J. Simpson next transcended color through the marketplace with these groundbreaking commercials.
Yeah, it's a good feeling. I always wanted to play with this guy. Now I'm on a team that is pretty exclusive.
He consolidated his favorite uncle image as a sports commentator, helping Middle America convince itself it was colorblind.
Yeah, well, we got a great team that we've just joined in this Hall of Fame.
This is as close as most Americans will come to having some member of their family on trial.
What we see on the surface is never the real person. And if there is one thing that I hope people will take out of this tragedy, it is to be very careful about thinking that we know somebody from their public persona, because we don't.
The image required an appropriate lifestyle, and this is one of his 3 homes. $5 million worth of mock Tudor mansion, pool and tennis courts in Brentwood. He told police he was asleep here during the murders. This is the exclusive golf course he played on. Closed to anyone without real money or fame. No problem in Brentwood. But some traditions die hard. And O.J. Simpson was a black man who didn't work as a caddy on the greens. And these are the streets and coffee houses of Brentwood, where hanging out and looking fabulous are full-time occupations for most of the rich young film star and sporting wannabes. For O.J., all this was 1,000,000 miles from home, yet just 1 hour's flight away. The number 32 jersey still covers the most famous son of the Potrero Hills district, here in San Francisco, where O.J. Simpson was born. But this is the other side of the tracks. Indeed, it's a whole world away from Brentwood and Hollywood. This is the very humble place of his youth. He was born in one of these slum dwellings that still cling to a hillside. The poverty endures, and each generation faces the same uphill struggle. His father deserted him, his stern mother took charge. Today, the Juice, as he's called, is the one shining light on the narrow path out of this trap.
We're from BBC Television. How are you? British Broadcasting. Hi, thanks very much for asking us to come. What did he mean? What did O.J. and what does O.J. mean to the Potrero community here?
O.J. meant quite a bit to us, to be perfectly honest, because he showed us that coming from our area, that you can rise above. You can rise above your circumstances, be how meager they are, you see. And O.J. was like a role model, man. Everybody was proud of you.
O.J. could see for himself how tantalizingly close he always was to the better life that hung like a backdrop on the other side of the slum hill of Potrero. He worked out at the recreation center, which sits in no man's land. And his face remains an inspirational come-on, emblematically encouraging the young hopefuls who leave their homes, as he did, for a few hours a day to earn their passport to freedom. This is how and where O.J. trained himself to become the fastest man of his sport. It took strength to play his way out of Potrero, But what was the real cost of that achievement? Calvin Tennyson was a close childhood friend. We met in the centre's playing field.
Being a black man, you have to be black till you hit the dirt, until you're dead. I mean, there's no time in your life when you're not going to look in the mirror and be black. And I feel that with all the money, the fame, the camera, the lights, the action, at some point in his life, in the early 80s, around the time he met Nicole, he looked in the mirror and he didn't see a black man anymore. He seen a neutral man or another kind of man that could fit in with the white society in Hollywood without any problem. He felt comfortable with that. Maybe he became uncomfortable with being black.
That was the world he left behind when his extraordinary sporting triumphs eventually elevated him here to Los Angeles and the suburb of Brentwood. He married Nicole, his second wife, in 1985, and they divorced 2 years ago. But we now know that on O.J.'s part, this remained a dangerously obsessive and violent relationship. It didn't end, it couldn't end, save in what the prosecution now claims was a conclusion of appalling finality.
Simpson has vigorously denied both murders, but the problem for him is threefold. He had a motive, his alibi is weak, and the forensic evidence implicating him is powerful. The murder scene was drenched in blood. The killer seems to have worn gloves, and one of them, heavily blood-stained, was found at the scene. The police allege that the Nicole murder was carefully premeditated by Simpson. Goldman was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. They say Simpson then immediately drove the 2 miles home. Damning evidence is this second blood-stained glove found in Simpson's own garden. And there are bloodstains on the door and inside his white Ford Bronco Jeep.
If Simpson did it, and there are no other suspects, what could have been the motive? Here was a man who had everything money could buy into or out of. But evidence that Simpson was anything but a nice guy to his wife has now emerged. Evidence of another O.J. Selfish, spoiled, possessive, a dominant bully. This is the O.J. America prays doesn't exist, but he seems to be real enough. He was certainly a vicious wife-beater struck by a social illness rampant throughout America, as the prosecuting district attorney himself revealed.
I've been talking about domestic violence and about the need to do something early on in domestic violence to protect not just the victim, like Miss Simpson, but others too.
Los Angeles has one domestic murder every 9 days. O.J. frequently battered his wife. The vehemence of his verbal violence is heard on this police tape of an emergency phone call.
Could you just please, O.J., could you please leave? Please leave. O.J., please, the kids. Is he leaving? No.
This was one of several such calls. After one of them, Nicole went to seek help. She found it with Dr. Susan Forward, a distinguished psychologist and a world expert on domestic violence. She became Nicole Simpson's personal psychotherapist.
What was your reaction when you heard the 911 tapes?
I cried because I remembered her. The voice came back to me when she was sitting across from me crying. At one point I went over and I put my arms around her and held her. And I said, it's safe in here. You can say what you need to say. And then you need to get angry. And when I heard the 911 tape, I heard some of the hopelessness, and I heard a lot of the terror in her voice that I had heard in the office.
Okay, and wait a minute. We're sending the police. What is he doing? Is he threatening you? I'm going nuts. Okay, has he threatened you in any way, or is he just harassing you? You're going to hear him in a minute. He's about to come in again. Okay, just stay on the line. I don't want to stay on the line. He's going to beat the... Wait a minute. Just stay on the line so we can know what's going on till the police get there, okay?
She had many threats against her by O.J. that, if you leave me, I'll kill you. If I can't have you, nobody can. If I can't have you, I'll kill you. Threats that she took very seriously, knowing how violent and volatile his temper was.
In 1989, Simpson was charged with wife-beating. His fame may have helped him secure a minimum probationary sentence.
My wife, Nicole, who came into my life at what is probably the most difficult time for an athlete at the end of my career. And she turned those years into some of the best years I've had in my life, babe. My dad...
But the public saw only the adoring family man.
And I don't know what you say about the most important person in your life. I'm just glad she's here today. My mother.
The impression he gives then is of an intensely loving man who loved his father, loved his mother, and certainly loved his wife, Nicole. Are you saying that was all fake?
Yes. You don't want people to know that you need to control and dominate and abuse your wife in order to assure yourself that you're the powerful one.
Simpson himself once spoke disarmingly about the difficulties he'd faced with Nicole.
But it was embarrassing. But because our relationship was strong and all our friends knew it, and they knew what they were reading wasn't necessarily the truth, hey, we just tried to put it behind us and ignore it as much as we could.
Nicole's funeral. O.J. was there. As the cortege moved sadly on, Nicole's mother asked him whether he'd murdered Nicole. No, he answered, "I loved your daughter." But the unbelievable was about to happen. Detectives and forensic scientists had been gathering more evidence, much of it from O.J.'s home. Bloodstains sent for DNA testing returned with ominous results. Finally, the district attorney was ready to prosecute. O.J. being O.J., he was invited to submit himself for arrest, but he declined and simply did a runner.
Mr. Simpson has not appeared. The Los Angeles Police Department right now is actively searching for Mr. Simpson.
They wouldn't have to look far. Driven by his friend A.C. Cowlings, he was heading south on the freeway.
I'm very confident we're going to find O.J. Simpson, because this is a man who can't hide too easily.
Now followed the mandatory but rather sedate police chase. A.C. Cowlings even called them on his mobile.
911, what are you reporting? This is A.C. I have O.J. in the car. Okay, where are you? Please, I'm coming up the 5 freeway. Okay. Right now, we are okay, but you gotta tell the police to just back off. He's still alive, but he got a gun to his head. Okay, hold on a minute. Okay. So that's all we ask. He got a gun to his head. Okay, and what's your name? My name is A.C. You know who I am, goddammit.
We couldn't actually see O.J., but we see a guy driving his car. Wasn't O.J. though?
As the sky blackened with helicopters, the chase became a procession. Next, a friend of O.J.'s solemnly read what sounded like his suicide note.
This letter was written by O.J. today. To whom it may concern. First, everyone understand I have nothing to do with Nicole's murder. I think of my life and feel I've done most of the right things. So why do I end up like this? I can't go on. No matter what the outcome, people will look and point. I can't take that. I've had a good life. I'm proud of how I lived. My mama taught me to do unto others. I treated people the way I wanted to be treated.
This is a copy of that letter, and it does reveal a disturbing and manipulative character. It's maudlin, egocentric, and filled with self-pity. It targets his adoring public, yet oddly expresses not a word of curiosity about who may have killed his ex-wife. Thank you for making my life so special. Think of me as the real O.J. and not this lost person.
I have been totally loving and understanding of what she's been going through. At times, I have felt like a battered husband or boyfriend.
He says in his letter, the so-called suicide note,
which I knew when it came out was not a suicide note, because narcissistic, abusive, obsessive men do not commit suicide.
O.J. eventually gave himself up and was driven like a visiting potentate to police headquarters, cheered by rubberneckers all the way. There was some evidence he'd been trying to flee from arrest. There was some suggesting he just couldn't face imprisonment on remand. Now his fame and his wealth began to work for him. Even as he was led away in handcuffs, a cavalry of lawyers was saddling up for the rescue. The biggest names in defense rode into town, attracted by his fame and possibly his $10 million fortune. First, they strung up a free phone hotline to solicit any evidence on his behalf.
If you have any information or evidence regarding the O.J. Simpson case, press 2 now. If you are an expert in the field relating to the O.J. Simpson case and would like to offer your services, press 3 now.
If you have millions of dollars, the American legal system really can offer better odds at proving your innocence. You can buy, as Simpson has, a dream team to defend you, but you can never buy a jury. Nevertheless, American justice itself is on trial in the Simpson case, for as the hysteria subsides, the nation will eventually demand clear and unequivocal evidence that neither the accused's money, nor fame, nor image is going to lead to the wrong verdict.
At this time, do you wish to enter a plea guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty.
O.J. will spend at least $4 million fighting to prove his innocence, but it's not so much what O.J. Simpson is buying as what many fellow black suspects can't buy that makes this case so controversial. What faces the average black defendant in a murder case?
In a sense, the whole world is against him right from the beginning. Instead of being like O.J. Simpson in that people don't want to believe that he's guilty, everybody wants to believe that he's guilty and does believe that he's guilty. But the most serious thing that affects him is that he has, when he's on trial for his life, he has no champion. He doesn't get to an adequate lawyer to do any of these things that have been done for O.J. Simpson, not one of them. And that's so that there's a sense, I keep wondering what these men in prison think as they watch the Simpson trial.
San Quentin Prison, death row for some 300 convicted murderers, many of them black. I went to visit 3 of them, all angry that O.J. Simpson has already been granted immunity from the death sentence if found guilty. Multiple murder is a capital offense in California. Inside one of the toughest prisons in America, they contemplate a justice system they believe is hand-tailored for the rich. Convicted men argue that indifferent lawyers, less consultation time, and less investigative work make their chances so much worse.
Is this where you have your visits normally, Terry? To put it at its simplest, if you are poor and a minority in the United States, you just don't get the kind of justice that Simpson is getting. Is that what you're saying?
If you're poor, period, in this country, you don't get that type of representation.
Why not? Is it just a shortage of money?
No, the system moves in a certain way, and if you can't shake that way up, if you can't... The fallacy about being proven guilty or being innocent until proven guilty, it just doesn't exist. There's a basic misconception that where there is smoke, there is fire. And the average, not all, but the average 12 jurors in this country, if you're sitting in the defendant chair, you are guilty. Money can help buy you that assumption of innocence. And that's what O.J. has going for him.
Were you surprised when the district attorney decided not to ask for the death penalty for Simpson?
I was not surprised that he did not ask for it in that particular case.
Why?
Because it would have brought to the forefront the whole issue of the death penalty in those type of cases. And people would have said, well, you know, O.J. Simpson, friends in Hollywood and places like that, these people that are normally used by the state to promote the death penalty, many of them would have came out against it simply because O.J. Simpson was their friend.
Do you need money to get justice?
Pointedly, I think yes. Seriously. There is a two-headed sword in justice in the criminal courts that I can understand here in California. If you have money, certain investigative services, certain experts are available to you that are not available to you if you don't have the funds to pay for them.
The truth is, the justice system is geared to speedy trials for the poor. Compromise deals cost less and don't drain the system of time and staff. That's why the rich benefit.
What would happen if every accused were able to do what O.J. Simpson has done?
The system would totally collapse. The rights are there, but if everybody could take advantage of them, we don't have enough judges, enough courthouses, enough jails, enough police to do that.
To Detective Furman, 3 issues are raised. First of all, evidence of racial animosity.
This is Detective Furman. Someone on Simpson's defense team has leaked a smear that the detective is a racist, so biased that he might have set O.J. Simpson up. It's a dirty trick even by Californian standards. It was Furman who found the incriminating blood-stained glove. Nothing would serve Simpson's defense team better than to have the honesty and credibility of this key witness impugned.
Now, the case of Detective Furman is one example of a potentially dirty trick at work, for there is a subtext to this case. Everyone knows what it is, but says little about it in public. It's race. O.J. Simpson is a black man who made it in a white man's world. That image, unthreatening, a genuinely nice guy, affable, a corporate American you would rent a car from, broke the stereotype mold. He married a white woman. That's still a sensitive matter here. Now it's alleged he killed her in a rage. The subtext for the racists in Southern California is obvious enough.
This is a cafe in South Central, the black area of a city becoming the focus for racial tensions in America. The lines are already being drawn over the O.J. Simpson case.
Don't you understand where you are? This is an area where white people feel that they are losing ground. In the next decade, they will be a minority in the entire state of California. They are a minority in terms of numbers in the city of Los Angeles. Okay? They are afraid of people of color because of the decades and centuries of sitting back unapologetically treating people of color the way they have.
There are malign forces on all sides. In a car park, I met 2 private detectives who claimed to be working for the friends of Nicole Simpson, but whose real job seems to be to spread malevolent gossip, often with racial connotations, about O.J. Simpson to the press. In a nation closely tuned into any information about the case, men like this often find an audience. One of them is armed with smears.
What have you learned about O.J. Simpson which you think you want to pass on to reporters like me?
Well, I've learned that he's not the Mr. Goody two-shoes, all-American hero athlete that he's perceived to be.
The second detective is camera shy and hides in the back of the car. Both investigators are anxious to give answers that reflect badly on O.J., but they become more evasive about questions concerning the people who've hired them.
Where does the money come from?
How do you mean? Well, 2 of the people are just, I would characterize them as independently wealthy, old money in this city, Los Angeles.
And just explain to me what old money means.
Old money being established, passed down generation to generation, having been in the city a long time. Their parents in established large business ventures in the city.
Old white money.
Right, more or less, yeah.
But what are the motives of the people who you won't name, who are sponsoring you? What is it that they want?
Well, in the words of at least one, the way I remember the initial meeting was, they wanted to make sure he was convicted. In the words of one, see him fry. characterize.
In a country where poverty, crime and race remain inexorably linked in the ultra-conservative mind, comments like that identify these men's paymasters more clearly.
You said rather enigmatically at the beginning of the interview that some of the money was coming from a political source and that it was old white money. Is that a kind of subtext for racist money?
No, not at all.
Do you think it could be?
No. In fact, I would characterize these people as liberals.
It's not a liberal sentiment to say, I hope he fries, is it?
Right. I think they're just so fed up with the crime in Los Angeles and the constant, the way they put it, the black eye for this city. And they didn't just move into town to get into show business. They've been here a long time. They've seen it change, and they don't like it.
Why, for all of these very legitimate issues, is the lightning rod persona an African-American man? Why does the focus only come when you have these scandals or when you have these tragedies? And I think the African-American community is starting to resent the negative attention and the unfair attention. Crime has a black face.
Secure in the embrace of their church and their history, many blacks still turn inwards for comfort. O.J.'s uniqueness was that he faced out and, for most whites, came to represent the acceptable face of black America, subdued, unthreatening, racially neutral. By living in a white man's world, O.J. Simpson may have lost contact with his roots. His fame and wealth certainly protected him from some of the harsher realities of his crossover life. But leading members of the black community identify acute sensitivity about some of the racial dimensions of the Simpson case.
On a racial basis, it will bring to the front one of the last taboos in the discussion of race. Black man, white woman. It will bring that to the front.
What is the subtext on the interracial marriage issue?
That's a minefield. The interracial marriage between an African-American man and a white woman in a society that used to be based on complete separation of the races, and a society that stems from slavery of African-Americans. You have to understand how central it was to keep them separate. So you're talking about the most central taboo in American culture is for an African-American man to marry a white woman.
But will these undercurrents divert the true course of the justice that Simpson seeks and America deserves? Or can prejudice and bigotry be cooled by the impartiality without which there is no justice in a democracy?
Can a black jury member be impartial in this case?
No. Nor can a white one. Without a great deal of moral wherewithal.
A majority of whites have already prejudged O.J. Simpson guilty. A majority of blacks are still thinking that he's innocent.
Even very sophisticated people say, all you have to do is put a couple of blacks on the jury and you're going to get a hung jury. It's much more complicated than that. I mean, anybody who thinks that, I think, is degrading the system. You get these people, you think you know what they think, but when they get together and they exchange views, it's something that it's mystical, and it works most of the time.
Justice will be done in this case. Will it be complete and wholesome justice? I can't really answer that. A lot of times, people make decisions that they feel they can go home and sit comfortably and be able to defend.
But if you don't believe that a juryman can be impartial on the matter of race alone, neither black nor white, how can justice be done?
Welcome to Southern California.
The world-famous K-Rock, 106.7 KROQ, 756, Kevin and Bean.
The skeletal forts of the media invaders besiege Los Angeles courthouse.
That's as grueling work as being a juror, isn't it? Almost. K-Rock.
Journalists jostle with entertainers to scratch the nation's insatiable O.J. itch. Some despair at what they witness.
Television itself has expanded to the point that there's so many options for viewers that the people operating elements of television are enormously fearful that if you don't give them something very catchy and exciting right away, somebody will turn to another channel.
You talk about, I'm sorry to interrupt, you talk about competition. I mean, just turn around and look at it. We've got CNN Live, right? We've got Channel 4 Live, that's NBC.
Channel 2 Live is CBS.
And if I had 3 more monitors,
and
you could
ABC
see,
at the top.
If I had 3 more monitors, you could see some other stations also covering
all
it.
running the same picture.
The same story. It's what's available on one screen is available on the other screen, and they're all enormously fearful that if they should be the first one to withdraw from the story, that somehow it'll taint them forever.
Mr. Kardashian, we hear that O.J. Simpson is in gold lyrics this morning.
It's very noisy out here, Lou, but jury selection has begun in the O.J. Simpson.
But there is a logic behind this coverage. The demand is real, and no one should underestimate the public appetite, even if media dignity is the first casualty.
O.J. Simpson button. O.J. Simpson button.
How much are you charging for them?
$1.
$1?
$1.
For one of those buttons?
That's right.
How much profit do you make from that?
How much profit I make? 60 cents a button.
Right.
Yeah.
Why do people buy them?
Look, if you turn off the television, I'll tell them why. Okay.
What?
Crazy.
They're crazy. You think people are crazy to buy the buttons? Do you think you're crazy to sell them?
No, I'm here for one reason. This, okay? I did World Cup. I've done this. I was ready to do the Pope is coming. I do only big events.
For weeks, crews have been constructing scaffolding and high-rise cameras.
O.J. Simpson's image has long outlasted his sporting talent. He became famous for being famous. Now he's become notorious.
Of its type in recent history.
They call it the O.J. media feeding frenzy, and there are certainly scenes here that you wouldn't see outside the Old Bailey. But things are not quite what they seem. Behind the circus and the carnival, behind the commerce and the nonsense, something profound is happening. America is talking to itself in one of those periodic bursts of self-examination when almost by accident it takes a great criminal trial to draw out the defining issues of the moment. Ironically, the nation has been galvanized into displaying the flags of endless controversy by the O.J. Simpson trial. It is a testament to the power of celebrity. Will his fame help or hinder him?
I think it's going to help him.
Will his color help or hinder him?
Probably hinder him.
And his wealth?
Depends on the juror. That cuts both ways. There's resentment against wealth as well, but there's also a romanticization of people who have money and who have made it. That could cut either way.
Do you think he did it?
I have no opinion about that.
Do you think he did it?
My own personal view is that he is as guilty as homemade sin.
Do you think he did it?
Yes, I do.
Do you think he did it?
Why? Based on the evidence I see now, no.
I want to hold until the last shred of evidence is in. I want to believe him innocent. The preliminary evidence weighs heavily towards guilty.
Innocent or guilty, the man inside this prison has touched all the hot buttons on the American agenda. But sadly, the nation has already forgotten that murder is also a simple and profound tragedy. The lives of 2 innocents brutally and pointlessly extinguished. In this, there is only one certainty, and that is the unquenchable loss of personal bereavement.
I love my son dearly.
We're going to miss him a lot.
And we'll miss him. Okay. Thank you. Come on out.
That report by Tom Mangold of the BBC's Panorama programme. And we'll have more of Sunday in a moment.